and we learned the three different levels of performance of mitzvahs. What's this all about? So the Rebbe told us that the Chiddush of Matan Torah. Now, of course, our question is, why is it necessary that Kabbalas Torah involves Mesiras Nefesh? Why there? Which is the reason that the Kabbalas Torah at the time of Purim was greater and more complete than the Kabbalas Torah at any other time. Right? Now, of course, we know about it. The Chabad deals with that at great length. Here, the Rebbe gives a completely different take on the whole idea, because the question arises: why is Mesiras Nefesh necessary? In Vatat Tzavah, the Rebbe doesn't ask that question. It explains things based on that idea. We said by Matan Torah three things happened. Three states of reality were affected: Tachton, Elyon, and Etzem. Tachton was affected in that it now can be connected to Elyon. Elyon was affected in that it now can be connected to Tachton. And Etzem was the means by which these two things are connected. Also, we learned that the Elyon remains Elyon and the Tachton remains Tachton. We said there are different ways. We're going to have to talk about a third way because that's going to come up later in the Maimer. There are different ways in which Elyon and Tachton can come into contact one with the other. When we're talking about Or, we did this yesterday, so we're doing it very quickly today. When we talk about Or, the Elyon is Mevatel the Tachton. The revelation of Seivev in the realm of Mamale brings about a bittul of Mamale. To put it in slightly different terms, the revelation of infinite in a realm of finite brings about the nullification of finite. That's Or. Different relationship, Mashpi and Makabel. When the Mashpi and the Makabel, the teacher and the student have a relationship, so the Elyon, when it connects to the Tachton, so the Elyon diminishes itself in order to be able to come down to the level of the Tachton and affect the Tachton. So it's the Elyon that is, so to speak, in a state of bittul. It's not really in a state of bittul, but it's the Elyon changes itself in order to connect to the Tachton, and the Dagesh, the emphasis is on the Tachton. That's Mashpi and Makabel. There is a third level which we didn't talk about, and that's Mamutza. That's when there's an intermediary, when they both meet in the middle, so to speak. Right? And that's going to come up later relative to Torah. Okay. Now, one of the Chidushim was that the Elyon and Tachton stay Elyon and stay Tachton. In both ways that we just explained, the Elyon is compromised by virtue of its connection to the Tachton and the teacher-student. The Elyon isn't as Elyon. The whole purpose of the Elyon is to bring itself down to a point where it can connect to the Tachton. So the Elyon is diminished in the Mashpi and Makabel relationship. In the relationship of Or Lamaila, that's revealed below, so then the Tachton is bottled. In this case, the Rebbe says the Elyon and the Tachton remain Elyon, remain Tachton. The physical object remains physical, and yet it is imbued with Kedusha. The Kedusha is still a state of Kedusha, and yet but in no way, shape, or form does it become physical. They remain what they are, and yet connect to each other, which is an amazing Chiddush. How can that be? Well, we'll see. In that context, because of these three levels, the Rebbe said, therefore, there are three different ways of performing mitzvahs. Mitzad the gavra, mitzad the person performing the mitzvah. A person can perform mitzvahs mitzvahs anashim milumada by rote. Doesn't think about it. But the Rebbe is talking about this as a maila. It becomes his teva. The teva of what? The teva of his nefesh b'amis. The teva of his tachton. The teva of his tachton is to daven chakras, to put on tefillin, to give tzedakah, to do all sorts of things, and he doesn't necessarily think about it. He doesn't necessarily even have to. There's no battle regarding it. That's just what happens. It's absolute. It's absolute teva. Then he picks up an apple. He says a Baruch eats before he eats it. As a matter of fact, he might not even think about it. Okay, so obviously he should think about it. But the fact that he says it without thinking about it is also quite astounding. Right? because his teva has now become, the teva's nefesh bamis is that he can't eat an apple without making a bracha. And after he leaves yeshiva, he's been in yeshiva for a couple of years, and he goes to his parents' house, and he turns on the television, God forbid. And what does he see on the television? He sees some person pick up an apple, and they eat an apple without a bracha, and it looks like the strangest thing he's ever seen in his life. What are they doing? He's eating without a bracha. Right? That was some Jewish actor pretending he's a guy, so he doesn't have to make a bracha. Right? He's playing Jesse James or something. So Jesse James doesn't make it. Of course, the guy behind the scenes, he made a bracha. He put on his yarmulke, he made a bracha. But on the movie, he can't make a bracha. He's Jesse James. Right? Okay. So, maybe Jesse James is really Jewish.
Oh.
Yeshaya James. Right? Jesse James was a bad guy? He was a bad guy.
Yeah.
Oh, he's a bad guy? He was an outlaw?
He was an outlaw, but people glorified him.
I glorify, yeah, like Robin Hood.
But it also turned out that he was also a terrible racist against blacks in the Civil War.
Okay, but I mean, yeah, not that that's good. It's not like he was the only one.
No, but I found that out recently, so I had to say it.
So they took down his statue, huh? No more statue for Jesse James, right? His statue's taken down. He killed 25 people. He robbed 36 banks. Got a statue. He didn't like black people like everybody else around. So, not that they were right, but it wasn't like he was, out of step. Okay. The second level is Ava. That a person does a mitzvah because he loves a Kadosh Baruch Hu and he wants to be connected to a Kadosh Baruch Hu. That's mitzvah the Elyon. First level is mitzvah the Tachten. It's nefesh abamis. Second is mitzvah is nefesh elokis, Elyon. And the third is, why does he do the mitzvah? Because it's the ratzon of a Kadosh Baruch Hu. It has to do with the third level. It's the ratzon of the Eibishter. It has nothing to do with him elevating himself. It has nothing to do with him expressing himself. It has nothing to do with him reaching closer to a Kadosh Baruch Hu. That all happens, but that's not why he's doing it. Why is he doing it? Because Kadosh Baruch Hu wants him to do it. Okay. Those three levels, that's what we saw yesterday. Now the Rebbe is going to explain those three levels relative to mitzvahs themselves, meaning we just explained it relative to us. Why might we do mitzvahs? So why did the Kadosh Baruch Hu give mitzvahs? Mitzvah Kadosh Baruch Hu, why are there mitzvahs? So there are three different levels of that also. Mitzvah the mitzvah itself. Now that's obviously going to affect those three different levels of avodah. There's going to be three levels in which the mitzvah was given, so that's going to also correspond to the three different levels of avodah and be the source of why there's three levels of avodah. V'yesh lahosif shasharish the Gimmel leifani meilu, the source of these three different levels, b'kiyum mitzvahs, of performing mitzvahs, who ki gam b'mitzvahs atzmam, also in mitzvahs themselves, yesh Gimmel inyanim. There are three different aspects. But dugmas Gimmel leifanim sheb'kiyum mitzvahs. Like the three different aspects of fulfilling mitzvahs. V'nyinu. The nasinas of mitzvahs lamata, and we saw this in Loisa Meshakelu, the Rebbe is going to quote the same Maimer Chazal. The nasinas of mitzvahs lamata, he k'Maimer Chazal, lo nidno mitzvahs elo l'tzaref b'anas apriyos. The mitzvahs were given to purify and elevate the creations. But how that is in a second, let's just continue reading. Hainu. Therefore, the intent of giving the mitzvahs, it's not mitzvah the mitzvah itself. Ella, that which the mitzvah produces and causes below. And what's that? Ella, this is the tachten of the mitzvah. Ella, bishvil habirur v'zikuch. Rather, because of the rectification and the purification, shall koiches ve'evari adam, of the powers and limbs of the person, Shemekayim is a mitzvah that performs the mitzvah. Ubishvila birur v'zikuch shel devarim sheba'olam, and for the bir and the zikuch of those things in the world, shebem mekayim is a mitzvah that the mitzvah is done with. In other words, the whole idea of mitzvahs is to elevate the lower realms. That the lower realms should be elevated and mitzad their lower reality also. In other words, when it's actually explained, this idea is explained, this Maimer Chazal is explained al pi pshat, What's the beginning of the Maimer Chazal? Who remembers the beginning? What is it? What is it that the Kodesh Baruch Hu doesn't care about, so to speak, in that Chazal? And then at the end it says the line that the Rebbe quotes: "Lo need no mitzvahs elu letzarif ben hasabriyos."
The details?
You're fed. What were the specific details in that Maimer Chazal? Do you remember?
I mean, a cow?
How you shech the cow.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So Al Peep Shot, the Mefarshim explain that what's Prat L'Tzaddik Ben Hasabriyos? How in the world am I refined as a person by virtue of killing a cow one way or another way? Like what? Meaning the Eibush doesn't care whether I kill it this way or that way. I mean, we know that what that really means because we learned the Maimer. Okay, so the Eibush doesn't care whether I kill it this way, but I have to kill it one way because that purifies me. Now, you can certainly talk about it spiritually. It purifies me to the extent that I'm doing it within the context of the Ratzon of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But then, okay, so let the Ratzon be the opposite. Doesn't matter. No. So the Mefarshim explained that there's also the Olam Hazeh aspect of it, and that's the Tachtei. The cow experiences less pain by being shechted in the front of the neck than the back of the neck. And so that means that I'm a person who cares about the pain of that cow, and I'm a better person because of that. Right? Am I not going to eat the cow? I'm going to eat the cow. Right? But I'm going to kill the cow in such a way that the cow suffers less. Right? Now, if you've ever been to a Schlachthaus, so the way they treat the cows, since they're, killing 1,000 at a time, it's pretty horrible. Right? But I mean, if you're talking about killing one cow in the backyard, which is how Shechita, used to be, right? You take your cow to the shechet and you check it. So there's no question that the way we do it is the cow dies immediately and doesn't feel pain, and so it's a painless way of killing the cow for the cow. Okay, fine. So the Mefarshim actually explained that that's why. What the Eibush care whether you do it this way or that way. But for us, it's better to be the kind of person who kills a cow that way. There's actually Mefarshim explained it that way. I'll be pshat. I'll be pnimius. So not even just pinim, just pshat al pi the ruchnius of it. So obviously it connects us to a Kodesh Baruch Hu by virtue of the fact that we're doing His will, right? And the objects that are being used for the mitzvahs are obviously elevated by virtue of the fact that they're now part of a mitzvah. Okay, so it's all about the tachtein. It's not all because there's other aspects of mitzvah. There is that mitzvah. There's aspect of mitzvahs that the mitzvahs are about what goes on in Eilam Hazeh and making Eilam Hazeh a place that works. Okay, certainly mitzvahs bein adam l'chaverei. That's what they're all about. In pshat, tachtein. So there's that level of mitzvahs. V'yeshin yanai l'yesir b'mitzvahs. There's a loftier aspect of the mitzvahs. Shem mitzvahs of Shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That they're the mitzvahs of the Eibishter. Shekichanu b'mitzvah sof. That He commanded us with His mitzvahs, which means what? Kedrashas Chazal, like the drush of Chazal al Pasuk, Magid devarav liYaakov chukav v'mishpatav l'Yisrael. He told His things, His words to Yaakov, His statutes, His mishpatim l'Yisrael. And then what do we learn from that? Mahu oiserim l'Yisrael lasos. That which He does, He tells us to do. In other words, we can connect to what's going to be called Darkei Hashem. Interesting, Darkei is very important. We're going to see that it's going to be plural. We can connect to Darkei Hashem, the different ways in which a Kadosh Baruch Hu acts. We can connect to that through doing mitzvah. Shekichanu b'mitzvah sov. Kadosh Baruch Hu maniach tefillin. So when we're maniach tefillin, we're doing something that Kadosh Baruch Hu does. Now, obviously, Kadosh Baruch Hu's anachas tefillin is not in Gashmias. Okay, Zayda, that's obvious. Zayda, so we do it in Gashmias because that's where we live. Mashu Oiseu Yisrael Asos. Dezeh Shekadosh Baruch Hu Mekayim is a mitzvahs. That which Shekadosh Baruch Hu is Mekayim in the mitzvahs. Kodim She'emer Yisrael Asos. Before He said to Yisrael Asos. Now before is obviously not in time. Right? Look at footnote 44. Umikevan de Lamailu Lamailu Miazman. And since above He's beyond time, there's no time up there. Time is a created reality. Loftiness. That His mitzvahs are higher. They happen in a loftier, more spiritual state, more godly state than ours. So that's rather obvious. Okay. So by virtue of the fact that He does these mitzvahs in this incredibly godly way, so then you and I can emulate Him by doing mitzvahs. Dezeh shekadosh baruch hu mekayim es hamitzvos kodim she'omer l'Yisrael asos hu mitzad atzmei. So then the mitzvah is mitzad himself, mitzad lamayla, it's from the upper realms. So a mitzvah is an expression of Elyon. Because what's a mitzvah? A mitzvah is an act that happens in the Elyon. A mitzvah is a godly act. There's an aspect of the mitzvah that's all about elevating the lower realms of reality. There's a lower realm, and the Kodesh Baruch Hu gave mitzvahs to elevate that lower realm. And that can be understood in a panimistic way also, but it's still mitzvah tachton. I'm taking physicality, I'm elevating physicality. That's what mitzvahs are about. Okay, it's all about the physical. It's all about the tachton. Connecting tachton to Elyon, Beseder, but it's all about the tachton. Then there's an aspect of the mitzvah, it's all about the Elyon. That what? What is a mitzvah? A mitzvah is a godly act. What does that mean? Not just it's something that allows me to connect to a Kadosh Baruch Hu down here. That's the first level. It itself is an act that a Kadosh Baruch Hu does, so to speak. Meaning I'm following the ways of a Kadosh Baruch Hu. And we'll see that I was going to explain that further in the next.
Rabbi, I don't understand how Hashem, in some way, doing the mitzvah.
What it looks like, none of us know. But what are mitzvahs? Well, let's read another 3 or 4 lines, and then it'll be clear, because the Rebbe is going to quote Tanya that you've all seen.
Okay.
Right? And then we'll talk about it. Kamuvan, gam mizeh, is also understood in the brackets. Sheramach pikudim, the 248 commandments, positive commandments. What do they relate to? What are they called? This Zohar is quoted in Tanya. Heim ramach evarim demalka. They are the 248 limbs of a Kadosh Baruch Hu. The mitzvahs are, so to speak, a Kadosh Baruch Hu's limbs. Now, what's a limb? A limb is that which expresses your ratzon. Right? A limb is an expression of your ratzon. If you were just a head, you'd have a hard time doing anything. Right? It's all coming from your head. Everything's happening in your head. Okay, now that doesn't mean that there's no reality outside of your head. That's not true, right? Okay, but everything that's happening in your life is happening because it starts in your head and then it expresses itself somewhere else. Unless you're thinking, then that stays in the head. Okay, but if you're speaking, well, okay, that stays in the head, but it happens in a part of the head called the lips. Okay, and you need the lungs in order to do that because you need the air to push out your mouth. Okay, so anything you do, what do you need? We need all these limbs. You need this body that is at the beck and call of the head. So the head wants to go get a drink, right? Okay, so the body gets up and walks over there, and then the hands reach out and fill up a cup, and then it pulls the cup to the lips, and the lips work on figuring out how to hold the water in without getting it all over your shirt, and away you go. And you have teeth to keep the water in, and that's why when your kids' teeth fall out, you'll always wonder, how do they keep the water in? They have no front teeth. How does it stay in there? Well, you can ask them that and see what they say. How are you going to keep the water in your mouth with no front teeth? Think about it. It's one of those deep questions of childhood. Okay, so our limbs, what are our limbs? Our limbs are an expression of us. And what particular expression? Our ratzon. How do you know what I want? Well, watch what I'm doing, and you'll figure out what I want. Okay, so what's a mitzvah? A mitzvah is like a limb of the melech. It's an expression of the king's ratzon, that which allows the king's ratzon to be expressed. What's that? That's called a mitzvah. That which the mitzvahs are, so to speak, the limbs of a Kadosh Baruch Hu, mitzad lamayla. So that's the lamayla of them. That's the godliness of them. They're coming from above. So what's pshat? A Kadosh Baruch Hu does mitzvahs. Well, again, what's a mitzvah? Mitzvah is an expression of the Eibishter's ratzon. So the Eibishter has certain ratzon. So he expresses that ratzon in his realm, and that ratzon is expressed in our realm in the context of doing certain physical actions. But that's an expression of his ratzon. So what does ratzon mean? Ratzon. So why can't that ratzon be expressed also in his realm? Whatever that looks like, I have no idea what that looks like. It's not a physical act. But when you say a Kadosh Baruch Hu puts on tefillin, what does that mean? That somehow a Kadosh Baruch Hu's ratzon is to express his love for the Jewish people. Just like when we put on tefillin, we're expressing our love for Kadosh Baruch Hu. Right? What's written in Kadosh Baruch Hu's tefillin?
Praises of the Jewish people.
Right? Mi kamchak Yisrael goy echad ba'aretz. Right? Psukim about how great Am Yisrael is. The Gemara in Brachos. It's not esoterica, right? So, and that's the idea of Shirki Chon Mitzvah. That doesn't mean the Kadosh Baruch Hu has a body, and it doesn't mean the Kadosh Baruch Hu wraps his tefillin on his right arm because the Kadosh Baruch Hu is left-handed. It's all a big joke. Everybody thinks he's right-handed, but he's really left-handed, right? Okay, say no. I could say something about Sandy Koufax, but I'm not going to. Looking at you, Doc, I just have this overwhelming desire to say something about Sandy Koufax, but I'm not going to.
Sandy Koufax watched Hashem pitch.
Exactly. That's what I was going to say. If Sandy Koufax pitched with his left hand, how do you think the Eibster pitched? I mean, you think he pitched with? There's only one way. You can't. Right? There's only one way to do it. Isn't that true? I mean, I don't think that's a very deep theological argument. Okay. So the mitzvahs are the darkei Hashem, the ways of Hashem. You want to express godly reality, godly ratzon in this world. What do? You do a mitzvah. Okay, so then that's connecting to the elyon of the mitzvah, the lofty, transcendent aspect of the mitzvah. Now the Rebbe is continuing, Val Yadei, because this is going to be important in terms of differentiating this from the next level. And by virtue of the fact that we do the mitzvahs, now this is connecting our doing to the mitzvahs, to this understanding of the mitzvah itself, right? Because really this is about the mitzvah, not about us doing it. Okay, but in order to understand something about the mitzvah itself, we'll also understand what happens when we do the mitzvah. By virtue of the fact that we do the mitzvahs, that he does, that the Kadosh Baruch Hu does. They're walking in the ways of the Kadosh Baruch Hu, duvukim, and they're connected to him. So now, there's no question that ultimately the mitzvah is about you and I doing a mitzvah down here. There's no question about that, right? Okay, but there's still this aspect of the mitzvah that's godly, and so connects you and I to a godly reality, as opposed to simply being that which is expressed down here and somehow allows us to elevate ourselves, to transcend a little bit of the earthliness of our being. That's the tachton of the mitzvah, that it purifies us, but it's all about us. Of course, ultimately, it's true. The mitzvah ultimately is about Kadosh Baruch Hu telling us to do things. Okay, that being the case, when he told us to do things, what's he telling us to do? Arbitrary things? No. That's the elyon of the mitzvah. He's telling us to do things that are intrinsic to his being. He's not telling us to do meaning the king could tell us to do anything he wants. It has nothing to do with him. And it would still elevate us. Why? Well, because it's connecting us to the king. So the king tells me, dig a hole over there. Okay, so I dig the hole. He says, fill up the hole. So I fill up the hole. Dig it again. So I dig it again. I fill it up. I fill it up again. Through all of those actions, I'm connecting to the king in a very powerful way. There's no question.
Even though it's arbitrary.
But it's arbitrary. It has nothing to do with anything. But for me, there's no question that that's an uplifting act, because if someone calls me up and says, can you come play tennis? I'll say, no. I'm working for the king. The king asked me to fill a hole. Oh, the king asked you to fill a hole. Where are you? I'm right next to the palace. I'm digging holes. Wow. Okay, so for me, that's elevating me. That's definitely giving my life meaning, and no question. But as you said, it's an arbitrary action. It doesn't mean anything, right? The king just gave me something to do, so I'll have something to do, because Nebuch, I'm down here and I don't have anything to do, so the king gives me something to do, and it's within the context of my life. And what's my life? I've been digging holes. Right? Okay, pave a road. Yeah, go pave a road. Okay, but that's not what mitzvahs are. There's also an elyon to mitzvahs. What are mitzvahs? Mitzvahs are intrinsically actions that are godly, because the Kadosh Baruch Hu gave us to do things that are intensely connected to him and his being and his ratzon and his ways. Now, what does that mean? I'm not so sure what it looks like up there. But each mitzvah is an expression of a certain aspect of godly reality. So now, there's no question that we know that certain mitzvahs are an expression of chesed, other mitzvahs are an expression of gevura, other mitzvahs are an expression of tiferes. Okay, so what's all that? That's darkei Hashem, the ways of a Kadosh Baruch Hu, the reality of a Kadosh Baruch Hu, so to speak, the personality of a Kadosh Baruch Hu. Okay. Now, the mitzvahs are also a very, very powerful expression of the personality of our neshama. We know that, right? We learned it in Basi Lagani. 613 strands to the rope of the neshama, each strand representing one aspect of the Ratzon of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Okay, true. But that's the Elyon of us. That's our Nefesh Elokis. Right? Mitzad the Tachta, and why do we do mitzvahs? Keeps us off the streets. It gives us something to do in life that has, toward a meaningful life. That's mitzvahs. Mitzad Tachta. Good book. Right? Who are you talking to? Tachta and Shabbat. What are you going to have to talk about? Meaning in life. Right? Whose life? My life. Why? Because that's where he is. Right? Not that he's a bad guy. That's not bad. He is there. It's not like he's pretending he's there. He is there. He's in the Tachta, and that's where he is. Okay, so you're going to talk to him. Mitzad the Tachta. And so what are mitzvahs? Toward a meaningful life. So Glenn Beck is also going to just love the book. Right? You don't need an Nefesh Elokis to love the book. And he's right to love the book. It's a great book. Right? Toward a meaningful life. It's all mitzad the tachta. Now, the person who wrote the book knows it's not all mitzad the tachta. But is there an aspect of mitzvahs that are mitzad the tachta? Yes, absolutely, 100%. Is that all there is? Absolutely not. But is that real? Absolutely. Right? And that's very important to understand. So if someone's talking about that level of reality, oh, yeah, that's not mitzvahs. You don't understand. Mitzvahs are lofty and holy. Oh, that's also mitzvahs. That's true. And if they don't believe you, so you can show them the Rebbe's first Maimer on Purim, Tafshin Yudal. So what the Rebbe's saying is very, very important. There's a tachtein to mitzvahs. There's an aspect of mitzvahs that are all about just giving you and I the ability to not just wallow in mud all day. Right? Okay. 100%. But there's another aspect of mitzvahs. Hold on a second. That same act that mitzad me gives me something to do, and we'll say it in a slightly more uplifting way. It can help me have a meaningful life and help me be a certain kind of person and elevate myself and purify myself. Okay, and grow. Okay, 100%. But that same thing is something much loftier than that. It's also something that connects to Elyon, and what's that? That's the godliness of the mitzvah. Because the mitzvah isn't just about me. I didn't create God. God created me. Right? And so when we do the mitzvahs, we're actually walking in the ways of the Kadosh Baruch Hu. And the reason he walks in those ways, I assume, is to give us the opportunity to walk in those ways. That's true, but they are the ways of the Kadosh Baruch Hu. So that's a very Elyon aspect of the mitzvah. So now the mitzvah isn't simply keeping me out of butts and giving me a meaningful life. The mitzvah is allowing me to emulate God. Devukim bay. V'al nimshach chai. Now the Rebbe says an amazing thing. Nimshach chayus la'adam. It's drawn down vitality to the person. Shemekayim mitzvahs. That performs mitzvahs. Kamei shekosov. What does it say about mitzvahs? Now, this pasuk is understood in different ways, and this pasuk was actually the pasuk that we used as a question as to why it is that I need Mesiras Nefesh to accept the Torah. Because what's the Torah about? V'chai behem. Be alive, don't be dead. Right? Mesiras Nefesh. Don't die for Torah, live for Torah. If you have to die for Torah, so then you have to die for Torah. But that's one mitzvah. That was the Rebbe's question at the beginning of the Maimon. Right? Why do we need Mesiras? Why is Mesiras Nefesh so important for Kabbalah Torah? Now, the same pasuk the Rebbe is going to use here to explain why. What's the Elyon of the mitzvah? What's the Elyon of the mitzvah? That we walk in the ways of a Kadosh Baruch Hu, and that gives us chayis when we perform the mitzvahs. Kamei shekosov asher yaseh sama adam, that a person should do them. Like what mitzvahs? And what? V'chai behem. And now, simple pshat, he'll live in them, but also live as a result of them. It'll give him chayas. Because what's real chayas? Let's see. Ki al yedei asiyas mitzvahs u'mizdabek b'kadosh baruch Hu. Because by virtue of doing the mitzvah, he's clinging, he's connecting to a Kadosh Baruch Hu. This is the Elyon of the mitzvah. Va'al yedei vatem advikim b'havai Elokechem. And by virtue of the fact that you're clinging to a Kadosh Baruch Hu, that you're connected to a Kadosh Baruch Hu, al yedei zeh chaim kulchem hayeh, and you're alive. The Medrash talks about 10 things that are alive. Right? So one of the things that's alive, a yid doing a mitzvah is alive. Because what's life? Well, we've talked about this in different contexts. Something that there's different levels of life. There's something that's alive, has existence. Then there's something that's chai be'etzem. It exists essentially. If something exists essentially, it gives chayus to other things. That's why your goof doesn't exist essentially. Because if your goof touches another goof, it doesn't give chayus to that goof. If chas v'shalom is a dead body in a chair, and you touch it, it doesn't come to life. But if you could get a neshama to touch that body, then it would come to life. Because the neshama is chai be'etzem. The neshama is so high that everything it touches, it gives chayus to, it gives vitality to. So what's a mitzvah? Mitzvah is chai be'etzem. And everything a mitzvah touches, it gives vitality to. Why? Because the mitzvah is the Eibishter. It's the Eibishter's drachim. It's the Eibishter's limbs. It's the Eibishter's goof, so to speak, is chai be'etzem. Our goof isn't chai be'etzem. The Eibishter's body, so to speak, is chai be'etzem. So when the Eibishter's body, so to speak, touches something, it gives it life. How do we get life? Connect to the mitzvahs. Connect to the ratzon of Kadosh Baruch Hu. Connect to the mitzvahs. And therefore, by virtue of connecting to the Eibishter, a person is alive. Now that doesn't mean that they're not walking around if they're not connected to a Kadosh Baruch Hu. What's the mashal in Chassidus? The mashal in Chassidus is a chicken after you shecht it. What does the chicken do for a while? Yeah. He doesn't make a lot of noise, but he's like moving around and doing. Turkey can even run around, evidently. I mean, I've never seen a chicken turn around. I've seen, chickens move around all over the place. But turkeys evidently can run around the yard after you've checked it. Right? Okay. So that's the mashal Chassidus uses for a human being not connected to the Eibishter. The turkey does it for about a minute, 30 seconds. Human being can do it for 120 years. And he's running around the yard, looking alive. He's not connected to anything. He's not connected to life. He's not really alive. Right? He's just in between birth and death. Right? What's life, mamish? Life, mamish, is Eibishter. Does that mean that every single thing that person does is horrible and terrible and no, right? Because many of those things that a person who for whatever reason doesn't have a conscious connection to a Kadosh Baruch Hu, many things they're going to do are good anyway, without even knowing it. They're going to do all sorts of things that are wonderful and incredible, and they're going to do all sorts of mitzvahs. Sheva mitzvahs b'nei noyach, they're going to do mitzvahs. If they're a yid, they'll do all sorts of mitzvahs without even knowing. So they're doing all sorts of good things that connect them to life. But what is life? Life is the Eibishter. So if I'm connected to the Eibishter, so then I'm connected to life. And that's the elyon of the mitzvah. What's the mitzvah? The mitzvah connects me to life. Gives me chayus. That's mitzad me, right? Why? Because the mitzvah is darkei Hashem. Because the elyon of the mitzvah. Because of that aspect of the mitzvah. So it's not simply giving my life meaning. It's giving my life life. Because it's godly. It's not arbitrary. It's godly. That's that aspect of the mitzvah. That's the elyon of the mitzvah. And the Rebbe explains, interesting enough, the Rebbe explains how the elyon, being aware of that, will affect us in our performance of the mitzvahs. Right? Even though the Rebbe is talking about what the Rebbe said is just like in the performance of mitzvahs, there's 3 levels, so too in the mitzvahs themselves. So really, the dagesh, the emphasis of this paragraph is on the mitzvahs themselves. But the Rebbe keeps talking about how that's going to affect how you and I perform the mitzvah, because ultimately it's true, the mitzvahs, it's all about being performed down here in Elam Hazai by you and me. No question about that. Right? The cave and she'inyan zeh sheba mitzvahs. And since this aspect of mitzvahs, Shem Durachav Shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu, they're the ways of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Vayedei Zeh, and by virtue of this, HaKadosh Baruch Hu Oiseh, as a mitzvahs, L'mayla, HaKadosh Baruch Hu does the mitzvahs, Hu L'mayla, does the mitzvahs, Hu L'mayla Mishaychus Leilevas. So it's beyond relevance to the world. Now, it can express itself in the world, so obviously gives us chayes when we do mitzvahs, but this is an elyon of the mitzvah. This is something lofty. And that's why it's hard for us to, what does it mean? The Yeshiva puts on tefillin. I don't know. I don't know what does that look like? I have no idea. How can I possibly understand such a thing? It's outlandish if I paint it in a picture that I can understand, right? Because I don't understand those things. I'm going to turn it into something physical by definition because I can't think of any reality that's not physical. I just can't do it. Okay, fine. So don't think about what that looks like because it doesn't look like anything that you and I can imagine. Okay, but what does it mean? It means that when you and I put on tefillin, we're emulating HaKadosh Baruch Hu. There's the putting on tefillin, which is the level of doing an act which will elevate me and turn my day into a different kind of day because I'm connecting to things that are of worth. Okay, that's the tachte of it. Then there's the elyon of it. Somehow when I'm putting on tefillin, I'm doing something that the Eibishter does. He's allowing me to emulate him. I don't know how he does this, but okay, that's what putting on tefillin is. I remember hearing, there's some people who remember all these things, and I unfortunately never did, never do. But I do. It was sometime around Kislev Nun Beis. That's what I think. I believe it was definitely after either Mincha or Marv. It was a Sikha either after Mincha or Marv. I don't remember exactly when. I don't know why. But the Rebbe talked about, he said something very interesting about that. We've talked about it before, doing a mitzvah. He said once a day you should do a mitzvah, and you should do the mitzvah. This is going to be the third level ultimately, but still we can appreciate it now. Do the mitzvah and say actively before you do the mitzvah, I don't want anything from this mitzvah. I don't want Elam Haba from this mitzvah. I don't want Elam Hazeh from this mitzvah. I'm doing this mitzvah just to give you nachas. The best time to do it is putting on before you're putting on tefillin, because it's such a contained act. It's a 5-second act. To tighten the knot, say the bracha, and do that. Okay. Before doing that this morning, say, okay, I'm about to put on tefillin. I don't want anything from this mitzvah. I don't want Elam Hazeh from this mitzvah. I don't want Elam Haba from this mitzvah. I'm doing this mitzvah simply because I want to give you nachas. You like these things. It's a completely different mitzvah. That's hard to do. Sounds easy to do. But thoughts might creep into your head. Because this might be the best mitzvah you've ever done. So you say, ooh, so this might get me the biggest room in the villa in Elam Haba. Ooh, no. Turn down the room. I don't want the room. Now the Rebbe continues about this level. The level of chayus that a person gets from doing mitzvahs on this level, the level of Elyon, chayus the beginner's seviv. The seviv calling, because what are you connecting to? You're connecting to the Eibishter's ratzon, the Eibishter's ways. Right? Shemitzad atzmei, in terms of itself, this level of godly light, we know it's transcendent and separate from the worlds. It's beyond the worlds, can't be revealed in the worlds. Nevertheless, and this is one of the expressions of the yichud of Elyon and Tachten. But the Elyon stays Elyon, and the Tachten stays Tachten. But the Elyon, which in this case is going to be Sevev, can be brought down into the Tachten. He's given actual energy from Sevev, even though that seems to be contradictory in terms. But the Rebbe quotes, look at footnote 50, the Rebbe quotes Tanya. It's not a chiddush in this line. La mitanya perek memvav. The perek sheshekit shanu b'mitzveisav. What's kit shanu? What does kadosh mean? Kadosh means transcendent. That's what the word kadosh means. Kadosh, kadosh, kadosh. So I remember a number of times we've asked in the room that you do some homework and look it up, and what are the 3 different levels of kadosh, kadosh, kadosh. So who remembers? You say it every day in Uval Etzion. Oh, we didn't remember. Can't believe it. You didn't say Uval Etzion yesterday? Meaning this is not something that should be hard to remember. Why? Well, because I say it every day. So once I notice it, okay, I understand that I say it every day and I don't notice it. That's perfectly, that's reasonable, but that's an experience that we all experience. Okay, there's things we say that we don't understand or we don't notice. Fine. But, okay, we took notice of the fact, wait a minute, it says Kadosh, Kadosh, Kadosh. So what are these 3 levels of Kadosh?
Makim means man.
Okay, you're fair, but there's 2 levels of Makim, right? Elam Haza, Elam Haba, and time. You fair? Right? Beyond Elam Haza, beyond Elam Haba, and beyond time. Right? I mean lower worlds, upper worlds. Right? Okay, you're fair. So those are a few levels. So that's Kadosh. So Shekit Shanu b'mitzvah. He caused us to be transcendent with his mitzvahs. So what does the Alter Rebbe say? Shehi kedusha shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu. This is a Kadosh Baruch Hu's kedusha that we're connecting to. In other words, a level of godliness that is transcendent. And what's that? Right? B'chveidu b'atzmai. Masha Kadosh Baruch Hu moved al mi'elemes. That which a Kadosh Baruch Hu is separate, removed, so to speak, from the worlds. What's that? That's our Sefer. Which is that aspect of godly light which is transcendent of the worlds. But Afal Pikain, nevertheless, and what's that? Nefesh Adam Shemakayim mitzvah, the soul of a person that performs the mitzvah, B'mailis Madregis Kedushas Ein Sof Baruch Hu Mamish, is on the level of the holiness of Ein Sof Baruch Hu Mamish, which means the transcendence of Ein Sof Baruch Hu Mamish, which means Sovev, Me'achar Shemisyachedes, because the neshama unites, Umiskalelis, and is incorporated by Yisbarach in that level of godly light, Vayu Lachadim Mamish, and they became one. They become one. That's Tanya, Perek Memvav. You do a mitzvah, what are you connecting to? Sovev. Now, in all fairness, we did in Basi Lagani, we also learned Kadis Kafis Sadrachu, Istalaki, the Kuchabrich Bechula. I mean, what does that mean? It goes out the level of light that's equal in all the worlds, and that's Sovev. So every time you do his kaf, you're also connecting to Sovev. But here the Rebbe is saying that somehow, now for Kadosh Baruch Hu, there's nothing that he can't do. That even though the nature of Sovev is that it's a level of light that can't be brought into Panemius in this world because it's transcendent of this world. It's too powerful to be clothed in vessels in this world. When you do a mitzvah, what does the mitzvah do? What's the yichud of the elyon and tachtein of the mitzvah? The Rebbe is saying an unbelievable thing. Yeah, I mean, it's the Alter Rebbe in Tanya, is in the Chiddush of this Maimer. Right? It's just it's like so many things that you don't notice things until it's pointed out. Okay, so when we're doing a mitzvah, what are we doing? We're bringing about a yichud of elyon and tachtein. The elyon remains elyon, and the tachtein remains tachtein, but they unite, which means that Sovev, which is the elyon, can come into the tachtein, which is the realm of mamale, and not be mavatalit, remain Sovev, and the tachtein remains mamale, and it can give chayas to that below. That's what a mitzvah can bring about, something that's supernatural. Supernatural relative to the natures of those levels of light. It's a mitzvah. That's the elyon of the mitzvah coming into the tachtein. But the elyon of the mitzvah is that it's a shekit shana b'mitzvah. Shemitzad atzmei, who achayos to bechinas seviv. Shemitzad atzmei who kadosh who moved al mi'elemus. Va'afal pikein, nevertheless, third line, ayidei kiyum mitzvahs who chay behem v'chayos panimi. Oh. So if a person really appreciates what a mitzvah is, the mitzvah is more like a battery in a car than gasoline in the car. Gasoline in the car, as you use it, it runs out. And you get less energy and less energy and less energy in the car, which is sort of how the body works. But then the neshama is like the battery in the car. I don't mean an electric car. I mean, No, because the electric car, it runs out, right? The battery in the car, the more you drive, the more you charge the battery, right? Generally. So even in those what do they call them? Hybrids. So in the hybrid, when your battery gets a little low, what do? You switch to gas. And now what happens? I mean, I only drove a Prius twice in my life, right? But at a certain point, the battery gets low, and if you're on the highway and you go into gas. Now, what's happening? The battery charges by virtue of the fact that you're driving. So the more you drive, the more you're charging. It's not the gas is going lower, right? No, but forget that battery. That'll even. But the regular battery in a gas-powered car, if you left your lights on at night, okay, so you have to charge you get someone to hook you up to cables and you start your car. How do you charge your battery?
Driving.
Drive around. Oh, that's the neshama. The more you do, the more energy it gets. Your goof, the more you run around, the tighter it gets. It's like the gas. But the battery, the more you drive around, now at a certain point, the battery will give out. The muscle isn't perfect muscle, obviously. At a certain point, you have to change your battery. But it is true that if your battery is low, the way to charge it is to do things. Drive, and your battery will get, okay. Your battery is low, do a mitzvah, you'll get more energy. That's why tzaddikim don't need a lot of sleep. However. So that's the second level. Elyon. The fact that mitzvahs are godly. And so we get to emulate God by doing mitzvahs. But interesting enough, and it's important that we read that part, Darkei Hashem, the ways of Hashem, because it's still plural. And what are the mitzvahs, if you think about it? What are the mitzvahs? Different expressions of different aspects of godly reality. Mitzvahs of chesed, mitzvahs of gvura, mitzvahs of tiferet. Okay. The ways of Hashem. However. Gam inyan zeh shebemitzvahs, even this aspect of the mitzvahs. Hu b'darga sheyesh bat siur. It's a level that has a certain description and definition. Therefore, I can talk about a mitzvah that shaykh to chesed and a mitzvah that shaykh to gvura. V'lochein, a mitzvah shebedarga zu, the mitzvahs on this level, heim v'yischalkus. They're in a state of differentiation. That's why we said Darkei Hashem, the ways of Hashem, Loshin Rabbi, plural. Ramach Evarim Demalka, 248 limbs of the king. Dam Shocha, the drawing down of godliness, they called mitzvah. Of every mitzvah, Hiyam Shocha Pratis is a particular detailed drawing down. So mitzvah tzedakah draws down chesed. Certain mitzvahs will draw down gvura. Certain mitzvahs draw down tiferes, Talmud Torah, tiferes. The idea of paskening halacha, so that's gvura, setting limitations. Right? Even if you make them, say it doesn't matter, still gvura. You're setting a certain limitation. You're creating a box. This is the reality that is considered proper. That's gvura. And every mitzvah is mamshich a certain aspect of godly reality. So, al pi Kabbalah, kavanas mitzvahs is all the different level of godly reality being drawn down by this mitzvah, this mitzvah, this mitzvah. Dugmas like kayach by ayin, like in the neshama, different aspects of the neshama are drawn down into the goof and express themselves in different limbs in the goof. Right, the power of sight expresses itself in the eyes. Kayach shmiya, the power of hearing in the neshama, is clothed in the ears. Okay. V'lochen, shayach she'adam yases and mitzvahs she'kadosh baruch hu yiseh. Therefore, it's reasonable that a person should do mitzvahs that the Eibishter does. Ki yuramach evarim sheba'adam atachtin, because the 248 limbs of us down here below, him kaviyachal I like dugmas, ramach evarim demalka. My hand becomes God's hand, so to speak. When I give tzedakah. Nasa Adam b'tzalmeinu chid mesena, because we are made in His image. But there's something beyond that. Zeh sham mitzvahs hem ratzon elyon. Mitzvahs are the Ratzon of the Eibishter. They're not his ways. I'm not talking plural. Every single mitzvah is equally an expression of the Ratzon of the Eibishter. In terms of Darkei Hashem, so this mitzvah is not an expression of Chesed. This mitzvah is an expression of Gvura. Okay. But every mitzvah is equally an expression of Ratzon Hashem. Just like in the Neshama. What's Ratzon? Ratzon is a Kayach Klali. Kayach Makif, we call it, right? Okay, Kayach Klali. Everything you do is an expression of Ratzon. Now there's Panimis of Ratzon, Chitzonius of Ratzon. There's things that the reason you get, we've talked about this many times, right? You pick up the phone. Why'd you pick up the phone? Because you wanted to make a call. Why'd you want to make a call? Because you want to get a taxi. Why? Now you don't have to pick up the phone. You just have to. Okay, I'm saying that you can go online. Okay, I'm saying, but we're old-fashioned. You pick up the phone to call the taxi. So do you really want to pick up the phone? No, you really want the taxi. Fine, you call the taxi. Do you really want the taxi? We don't really want the taxi. You really want to get to the airport. Okay, do you really want to get to the airport? Well, you don't really want to get to the airport. You want to get on the plane, right? Okay, you really want to get on the plane? Well, you don't really want to get on the plane. You just want to be in New York. You do. I can't say you don't want to get on the plane, but that's not what you really want. You really want to get to New York. Do you really want to get to New York? No. You really want to go to the business meeting that you're having in New York, which you don't have to do anymore because you just do it on Zoom. But okay, we're old-fashioned here, right? So you go, right? So you go to the business meeting. Now, do you really want to go to the business meeting? No. You just want to make the money you're going to make as a result of the business meeting. If you could do that without going to the business meeting, you would do that, but you can't. So you have to go to the business meeting. So you go to a business meeting, right? So you make your $1 million. Good. You want $1 million? No. You want those things that $1 million allows you to do. So what's that? You want to give tzedakah. Why do you want to give tzedakah? Sure, tzedakah mekarev says a geula, because tzedakah brings Mashiach. So why'd you pick up the phone? You want Mashiach. The panemius of Ratzon of picking up the phone is you want Mashiach. That's the panemius of Ratzon of everything you do. It's like an onion, right? It's all makif. Every act has its own Ratzon. You picked up the phone because you wanted to, so therefore you told your hand to move over to the table, pick up the phone, dial the number, and put it next to your ear, right? So you can't say you didn't want to do that. Of course you wanted to do that. That's why you did it, because anything you do because you want to do it. Okay. But there is panemius and chitzonius. But I can't say that those actions weren't an expression of Ratzon. They're all an expression of Ratzon. I wanted to do them. They were all, we would call that a means to a higher end. Okay. So now, relative to the Eibishter, there's the specific expressions of his Ratzon. But then there's also just the Ratzon klali, that every mitzvah is the expression of the Eibishter's Ratzon, equally. They all have their own particular role in all of that. And so even in halacha, we'll talk about mitzvot chamurot and mitzvot kalot, right? And you go, wait, I said, what do you mean a serious mitzvah and a not serious mitzvah? Well, okay, but say that we don't really, obviously you have to do them all, and they're all the expression of the Ratzon and the Eibishter, but I mean, there are certain aveiros that have worse punishments than others, okay? And there are certain mitzvahs that take precedence over others, okay? That's true. But ultimately, what do they all share in common? The Ratzon and the Eibishter. Every mitzvah is the Ratzon Elyon. Ratzon shelamayla time, a Ratzon is beyond reason. The Ratzon sheba mitzvahs, and this will that's in the mitzvahs, who b'chol taryag mitzvahs b'shav, is in all the mitzvahs equally. You can't say this mitzvah is more the Ratzon, this mitzvah is less the Ratzon. They're all the Ratzon. Lamayla mi ramach b'kat evadim, which is beyond the level of 248 limbs. 248 limbs are the different expressions of the Ratzon of the Eibishter, so to speak, outside of himself. So to speak. There's no such thing, but right? As they express themselves in different ways, relative to what ultimately will be us. But then there's that which unites every single mitzvah. What is every single mitzvah? It's the Ratzon of the Eibishter. Putting on tefillin, it's the Ratzon of the Eibishter. Putting on a talis, Ratzon of the Eibishter. Giving tzedakah, Ratzon of the Eibishter. Not wearing shatnez, Ratzon of the Eibishter. It's all the same. The cave and Ratzon sheba mitzvahs ulamayla be'ein arech mia adam atachten. Since the Ratzon in the mitzvahs is immeasurably beyond the person down here, shemakayim is the mitzvah that performs the mitzvah. Umikol shekain, all the more so, Mizeh Shulamaylam Yatzir the Adam Elyon, it's even beyond and transcendent of that reality of the Eibishter above, so to speak, the Eibishter mitzad, different aspects of godly reality. Okay, so 10 spheres. What are 10 spheres? 10 spheres are different aspects of godly reality. Chesed, Gvura, right? Now the Eibishter is one. Of course the Eibishter is one. But okay, but there's different aspects of that oneness. They express themselves in different ways. Just like you're one person. Obviously he's more one than you, right? But you're one person. But you have different aspects of you that are all the expressions of that one person. Okay, that's true. That being said, there's something beyond all of that everything you do is equally an expression of your ratzon. Now, there might be a ratzon pnimi and a ratzon chitzoni, that's true, but ultimately everything you do is equally an expression of the fact that you want to do that. The ratzon is me'achedet et the kol, it unites it all. Lochein, the gavei darga zu, relative to this level of reality, Kameshi mitzad atzma, as it is mitzad itself, this level of the Eibishter, the ratzon of the Eibishter, this, or the aspect of the mitzvah. What's a mitzvah? The ratzon of the Eibishter. Ein adam tevis makom, there's no place for a person there. What does that mean? I mean, this isn't commensurate to any aspect of me whatsoever, relative to Evadia Malka. So you and I are actually created in the image of the Eibishter, and so you and I have limbs just like, so to speak, he has limbs. His limbs are real, they're just not physical. Our limbs are not so real, but they are physical. Okay. Because physical reality is not so real. Okay, meaning it's not absolute. It's reality with a small r. It's existence with a small e. It exists, but not absolutely, because it depends on something else for its existence. Okay. The Eibishter's limbs are a higher level of reality, but it's still an aspect of the Eibishter that exists solely because he wants it to exist. It has no essential existence. Does the Eibishter need limbs? No. Why does he have limbs? Because he wants them. Why does he want them? Probably because he wants you and I to have them, so we'll be able to do mitzvahs. Okay, that's true, because the Rebbe was explaining that even the lofty level of a Kadosh Baruch Hu in terms of what we do down below. Okay, true. So does the Eibishter absolutely have limbs? No, of course not. But the Eibishter, so to speak, has limbs. Why? Because he's going to create a reality where in that reality there are mamish limbs, to the extent that that reality exists, and he wants that reality to be able to connect to him, and so he's going to have limbs so that that reality can have limbs. Okay, fine, good, no problem. But there's a level beyond that. Why does the Eibishter have limbs? Because he wants them. There's a level beyond it all. It's called the ratzon of the Eibishter. And and ultimately we call it the ratzon of atzmos, even though that seems to be a contradiction in terms, but okay, we can live with that. Everything that exists outside of atzmos exists solely because the Kadosh Baruch Hu wants it to. Nothing has to exist. The highest level of godly or does not have to exist. It only exists because the Kadosh Baruch Hu wants it to. I mean, we say Kadosh Baruch Hu, we mean atzmos. The only thing that is what's called mechuyev hametzias. We've talked about this before, but it's just an idea that you have to have. It has to be not only teva sheni, it has to be teva. All right, we learned yesterday. All right, mechuyev hametzias, that which absolutely must be, can't not be. It's only one thing: the essence of a Kadosh Baruch Hu. Every other level of existence only exists because that level wants it to. Why? I don't know. That's not my issue. That's not done. It's not our business. The highest level of godly light only exists because the Kadosh Baruch Hu wants it to. Again, we say Kadosh Baruch Hu, we mean Atzmus. The only thing that is of absolute existence, meaning it exists by virtue of itself and can't not exist, is the Eibishter himself. Atzmus. Light doesn't exist by virtue of itself. Light comes from a source. And what if that source were to decide that the light should no longer exist? So go out of existence. Poof, no light. No big deal for the Eibishter. Okay, so ultimately, where do the mitzvahs come from? That ratzah. Are we teifes makom there? Are we up them? Nothing's teifes makom there. Nothing takes up space there, so to speak. That's what the Rebbe said. Even those aspects of godly reality that we call dark Hashem, even they are completely bottled to that level. As a matter of fact, what are they called? All the different levels of godly light. What's it called relative to Atzmus, which is referred to as Yesh Amiti, true being? They're called Ayin. Not true being. Doesn't mean they don't exist, right? What does it mean they're not true being? They don't exist by virtue of themselves. They exist because they have a source in a higher level of existence. So what? If you look at you and I, you'll say, well, okay, where'd this thing come from? Well, it must come from somewhere. So that's what really exists. That thing it came from. Okay, you're fair. So where'd that thing come from? Oh, it came from a higher level. Okay, so that's what really exists. That higher level. Well, okay, but until you get back to the end of the road. What's the end of the road? Atzmus. Where'd that come from? It didn't. What do you mean it didn't? It just is. Can that be? I don't know, but it is. Atzmus. V'legabe darga zu, kameshi mitzad asma ein adam tefes makom, da bittul dehed tefes makom. In this state of nullification, who bittul b'metzias. It's the highest level of bittul. Let's just finish the paragraph. We'll come back and we'll do this again Sunday morning, but let's just finish the paragraph. V'gam la'achre sheyeshne hatzivu, even after there's a command, la'adam, shayadei zehu nase metzias. That's what we just said. By virtue of the fact that there's a command to a person to put on tefillin, that by virtue of this, the person has metzias. What gives us metzias? The Eibusha commands us to do mitzvahs. That's what gives us metzias. Kol metziusay, his whole metzias, hu rak lamaletz hatzivui, is only to fulfill the tzivui. By yadei shu mamales hatzivui, by virtue of the fact that he fulfills this tzivui, hu mischaber, he connects mitzvah miloshen savta v'chibur. Now, mitzvah is not the commandment. Mitzvah is the lashon of connection. Ima mitzava, with the one commanding. Shula ma'ilum men bein arach, who's completely and totally beyond. So there's the third level of the mitzvah. The etzem. What's that? The ratzon. What's a mitzvah? The ratzon of the Eibusha. It's not darkei Hashem. It's one thing. It's beyond the darkei. Darkei is already ischalkus. That's already sphira, so to speak. It's godly. It's the Eibusha. It's the ways of the Eibusha. Then there's a level beyond that in mitzvahs. That's the alien of mitzvahs. Then there's a level beyond that, and that's the etzem of mitzvahs. What is the mitzvah? What's in the Eibusha? So the Eibusha wants. Completely and totally beyond you and me. And once we connect to that level, so we're in a state of complete and total bittul. Because what do you become? You just become an expression of him. Right? If the Eibusha said, pick up the cup, so what's your hand? It's the Eibusha's hand. But it's even beyond that. On the level of the mitzvah, it's the Eibusha's hand. Right? But on the deeper level, what's my hand? It's just me. Isn't it? Ow! Why'd you hit me? You didn't hit me. You can't hit me. Me is some conscious being that's happening in there that doesn't take, there's no such thing. You can't hit me. You can just hit different parts of me. Okay, but say it, but you hit me. Because this is me on some level. Okay. So that's the mitzvah on the deepest level. It's me. It's him. There's the level in which it's his hand. Why'd you hit my hand? That's also true. What are you hitting my hand for? There's a deeper level. You hit me. Which is going to bother me more? That you hit my hand or you hit me? It's going to, yeah. If you hit me, I'm really bothered because you hit me. It's not my own yeshus in a negative way, right? But that's what's going to bother me more because that's really me. You hit my hand. Oh, I care. What are you doing? What's wrong with you? Are you okay? Are you normal? Why are you doing that? Right? It shouldn't bother me. I should feel more badly about you than I feel about me because probably hitting my hand isn't going to hurt me so much. And the pain that I'm feeling from my hand is obviously a lot less than the emotional pain you're feeling by virtue of the fact that it caused you to hit my hand. So I should really feel very badly about you. Right? Are you okay? You must really be in torment if you hit me like that, right? Are you okay? If you hit my hand like that. But I don't relate because he hit me. Right? But if I could just there's no me here. Just let's see what happened. I should feel sorry for him. Never. Right? Someone yells at you in the street. You say, "Why, never? Wow, this guy must be so unhappy."